When you are first starting out in AWS, it can be extremely daunting. AWS has over 1,000 services, and knowing where to start can be intimidating. In this video, I'm going to be going over 10 tips, tricks, and things I wish I knew when I was getting started building my first projects in AWS. Before I get into the video, if you like these tips, please like and subscribe if you want more cloud engineering content. With that being said, let's get into the tips. The first tip, there are only a few services that you'll actually use. It can be daunting looking at those 1,000 services in the dropdown. Now, most of these you'll never touch. For example, AWS Ground Control that helps connect to satellites, or Amazon Sumerian that's a VR AR tool that I'll never use. There are a few main services you will use almost every day that you're working with AWS. Those main services are IAM, Identity Access Management, S3, that's basic block storage, S3 buckets, VPC, this is your virtual private cloud, this is where you do all your networking, and then EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute, this is where you run your basic server instances in the cloud. There are a few secondary players, think Route 53, CloudWatch, RDS, Lambda, but you'll learn as you use AWS more which services you use more than others. And a little tip is you can pin these to the top of your dashboard with this little pin icon. A second little bonus is when you're searching for a resource and you can't find it, check EC2. From AMIs to ELBs to security groups, a lot of things that are associated with AWS instances are actually in the EC2 tab. So check there if you can't find something. Now, if I just said a whole bunch of acronyms that are total alphabet soup to you, I'll be linking down below a really cool document called AWS in Plain English, where it breaks down the core services in plain English. AWS is notoriously bad at naming their services. Now, number 2. Lock down your IAM user, not just for security, but for learning. Many AWS tutorials were mentioned to not use your root account and set up an MFA for everything. Basically follow the AWS checklist. This is a really good tip and should totally be followed. But once you set up your first user account, it's tempting to just give this new user the admin role and be on about your business. This has 2 downsides. The first, more obvious one is it's a security risk having full access for a user. It's easier than you think to slip AWS creds into a Git push or a public Docker image, and then the internet has public admin access to your account. The second reason you don't want to give this new account full admin access is it's less optimal when you're learning how AWS permissions work. One of the most complicated parts of AWS, even once you get experience, is understanding AWS permissions. A workflow pattern here is to give yourself only the permissions you need them individually. This will allow you to learn access patterns as you need them for resources when you are using them. Number 3, the AWS region matters, but location not so much. One of the first decisions you need to make after setting up an account is what region to spin up some of those shiny new resources in. This might seem easy because you can just pick the closest region to your current location, but in many cases this would be a mistake. AWS regions are not equal. Many regions have completely different service offerings, and many don't have the newer AWS releases. Also, there's a cost difference. Prices vary by region. For example, US West 1 in California is more expensive than US West 2 in Oregon for most cases, and Oregon has more up-to-date services and features. Cost differences get more extreme when you look at something like spot instances. There can be 20% price differences between regions, as I explored previously in my AWS cost optimization video that should be in the card on the top left. Lastly, it's going to be tempting to use US East 1 Northern Virginia. It's the default, but just don't. It's commonly referred to as US Tire Fire 1. It's the oldest and biggest region, but it shows. Myself and many others have experienced much higher number of outages and just plain quirks in that region over others. If you're in North America, it's pretty safe to stick to US East 2 Ohio or US West 2 Oregon when you're just getting started. Those are 2 good, fully featured, stable, and normal priced regions. Number 4. Don't use the default VPC or subnets. When just playing around with an EC2 instance, it's fine to just use the default VPC and subnets. But if you're going to be running any real workload on the instance, pony up and build your own VPC and subnet. This is much better practice, and in the future, it's an absolute pain to migrate from a default VPC. Also, VPC networking is complicated and requires practice. It's better to start earlier if you want to really get better. Number 5. Tag your stuff. This one's pretty self-explanatory. It helps to stay organized as you grow, and it's really nice to know what resources belong to who and what. There's nothing more annoying than rolling up to 20 terabytes of EBS volumes that are unattached to anything, and they have no identifying information and no tags. This creates a pretty painful situation because you have expensive resources just sitting there, and you don't know if there's important data that you can't delete. Just don't be that engineer. Tag your stuff. You can tag almost any and every resource, and every resource should have tags. Many organizations actually have implemented automation that enforces and deletes resources without tags automatically. So that's how serious some places take tagging. And now on the theme of tracking and monitoring your resources in AWS, let's get to the next tip. Number 6, use CloudWatch. CloudWatch is AWS's internal metrics and monitoring tool. Most of the resources will spit out free CloudWatch metrics for you to consume. You don't need detailed metrics. 5-minute intervals are sufficient. You will at some point need to understand what's going on within an EC2 instance, an RDS database. You're going to want to know what's going on these resources that you're paying for. That's where CloudWatch comes in. It's really important that you grasp CloudWatch and its tools early to make you effective in the cloud. You also get a lot of free CloudWatch metrics out of the box for using other AWS resources, but you can also check the AWS free tier because CloudWatch has some specific things around dashboards and other custom metrics you can build. On the note of the free tier, tip number 7 is learn to understand the bill. When you are starting out, this means dig into the free tier. It's awesome how much there really is, especially once you stray away from some of AWS's more popular products. The free tier will allow you to get the most out of training and building your skills at AWS without having to potentially pay anything. Also, when it comes to actually understanding the bill, there's a powerful tool AWS provides to help with cost tracking that many engineers don't know how to use at all, and that's the Cost Explorer. Many teams spend thousands of dollars on third-party tools to help with cloud costs, and they overlook this powerful one right in front of them that's already included in their AWS account bill. Number 8, don't leave AWS discounts and savings tools on the table. Basically, learn the easy ways to save money. Now, this could be pretty complicated and advanced, such as learning how and when to run resources with proper sizing, but AWS has cost savings tools to get the most out of your dollar, especially if you're running resources for the long term. With the new savings plans, it's easier than ever to purchase for long-term use and save a significant portion of your EC2 bill. For more dynamic and less long-term work, take a look at spot instances. Spot instances are instances that are allocated out of a market by setting a bid price. They have the highest potential for savings, but AWS can revoke your ownership and kick you off them at any time. You'll hear some experienced AWS users talk about spots being really inconsistent, but that's mostly changed in the last few years, and they're now pretty stable. For things outside of EC2 that you plan to be running for multiple years at a time, take a look at reserved instances. Although I would predict they're on their way out and will probably be replaced by savings plans soon. Now, these next 2 tips are a little bit less AWS and a little bit more meta. So, tip number 9 is don't be overly scared of cloud lock-in. This one is going to be controversial, but I don't think your team should be scared for lock-in. Although many CTO types have this idea in their head that an org has to be ready at any moment to abandon a cloud provider and go to another, in practice this can go way too far and lead to not using a lot of the features AWS has to offer. Without using a lot of these tools, you're back at just running everything, including DBs and supporting tools on EC2 instances. And if your footprint is just running everything on servers, provisioning and managing everything yourself, you probably shouldn't be using AWS in the first place. There are a lot better, cheaper options to just run Linux servers. Unless you have a business reason, I see little need to put effort into this. I know there is a complicated line here, but I don't know about you. I don't want to spend my time managing something like a Postgres database and its needed backups, replication, when AWS will just do it for me. And that brings us into our last tip. Tip number 10, automate everything. Anything you do in the console, followed up by automating it. If that's through an infrastructure as code tool like Terraform or Pulumi, or even one of AWS's tools, you want to learn as soon as possible how to codify your cloud work. If you plan to use AWS in your engineering future, all decent engineering orgs that are using the cloud are going to be automating as much as possible. So the sooner you learn these tools, the sooner you'll advance your cloud skills. And that completes our list. Those are some of the things that I wish I knew starting out. Let me know in the comments what other tips I missed, or if you have any questions. Feel free to subscribe if you want more cloud engineering videos like this, and thanks for watching.